Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for coming to our event this year. So EuroACE, we are mainly concerned, as you know, about energy efficiency in buildings, and at the present time here in Brussels, the hot topic is post-2020 climate and energy policy. And you will have found in your packs, hot off the presses, the EuroACE position for the public consultation, which has been open. And this position talks about the need to take a 2050 horizon when we are looking at energy efficiency and climate policy. And I feel that this morning's discussion around sustainable buildings falls very well into a similar timeframe of 2050, where there's going to be a need indeed to go beyond pure energy efficiency. We have that already with the Energy Performance of Buildings Directive, where we have to integrate renewables into existing buildings. And who knows, is this the next step along the way for buildings in Europe to look at the more holistic approach represented by sustainability? So we learned this morning that the European Commission is not entirely coherent across its different DGs, if I might be so bold, because we have environment looking at everything except energy efficiency, we have enterprise looking at competitiveness, we have health looking at indoor air quality, and we therefore have at least 4 DGs looking at one sector. And it leads, I would think you should agree, to confusion or potential confusion in the market about how best to regulate the building sector. And I think that's an important question, because we know the building sector is the sector that today can provide the most cost-effective answers to the economic crisis, the environmental crisis, and the social crisis that faces Europe at the present time. So in that context, I would like you to think more about what we as a community will say when various directives come up for review or revision in the coming years. And indeed, we will all surely be involved in the public consultation that DG Environment are about to launch on what will be sustainable green buildings. Is that what they're going to call it? Sustainable green buildings? Who knows? So, I also thought just to pick out a few of the messages that came out, at least for me, from this morning's presentations, all of which I found to be most stimulating. The first presentation by Lone Pfeiffer looked very closely at the issues that go beyond energy efficiency. And in that session, I thought you might not have picked it up, but did you know that the audience as a whole only got 2 of the 5 questions correct? So although a room of experts, we're not scoring highly when it comes to quizzing our knowledge. But what I was struck by was the 3 key areas that the radar for the active house uses, which are comfort, energy, and environment. And I think you could parallel those, comfort being the people, energy being the economy, because we spend so much on energy, and environment being the planet. So you have, from the 3 key elements, people, economy, planet, or as it's sometimes called, people, profit, planet, but maybe economy is a better word. I was also struck by the new piece of research presented towards the end, which is certainly news to my ears, that property values in cities are closely linked to daylight access. Now, as an architect myself, I know the importance of daylight to well-being. I know the importance of daylight into buildings to keep energy down. I know the importance of urban planning to give access for buildings in cities. I didn't know that the property value is affected by these daylighting issues. So this very fresh piece of research could add to our collective knowledge on how to argue for more sustainable buildings, both new and renovated buildings. We also learned that energy efficiency is not the only motivation, and thankfully so, and the Renovate Europe campaign has already brought to the surface other multiple benefits of energy efficient renovation. And some of those other benefits around health, around job creation, around avoided subsidies are actually probably more motivating for policymakers than the pure energy savings themselves. And a very recent study also published by the European Commission has shown that the energy performance certificates being issued across Europe are in fact having an impact on property values. The average looks like, from the studied countries, an average of a 4% increase in the sale value of a house for a one-step change in an energy label. So if you improve your house from an E label to a B label, you're going to increase the value of your property by 12%. This looks to be about the average across Europe. 3 steps, 3 times 4, 12%. So we are beginning to see a lot more coming out in Europe at the present time. We then had a very comprehensive overview of what DG Environment is thinking about for this communication on sustainable or green or better buildings, whatever title we end up with. And it was interesting to hear that the building sector is a priority for measures. So it looks like DG Environment are going to come forward with measures and not legislation. Is there a difference? Are they going to come up with more targets around these measures? And what will they have learned from their experience with eco-labelling, which has been such a long, drawn-out procedure? One thing, and I'm sorry Pavel's not in the room to hear me say it, that I don't agree with is DG Environment, and he said it, they consider buildings as products. Buildings are not products. Buildings are much more complex than a simple product, and they're complex for many reasons, but they are, at the simplest, they are a collection of components forming a coherent system, and they operate like any living system, changing over time, reacting to the climate, etc. I always rail against the idea that a building is a product. Certainly it contains plenty of products, but it is not, at the end of the day, itself a product. Also, green public procurement for different categories of buildings. This was, for me, a new concept this morning, because DG Environment have been working on green public procurement for different product sets, like windows, like I suppose, I can't remember the other ones that have come through, but windows have certainly been there. And I wonder what they mean. A green public procurement for schools, a green public procurement for hospitals, a green public procurement for office buildings. What would be in that? What would add to the existing sets of legislation or regulation that we have to take this typology approach? So I think I would encourage us all, and indeed we ourselves will certainly be looking at this communication on green, better, sustainable buildings and making some comments. And finally, we had the presentation from Alec Paskov, which I found very interesting. But I'm going to say to Alec straight away, I'm an architect, and the language that you use does sound foreign to me, because you talk about sale of receivables, forfeiting models, etc. And it made me realize that in the sector that we're in, financing, of course, is absolutely crucial. But an architect or a product manufacturer or an engineer, can we understand the subtleties of financing models, special purpose vehicles, etc.? In fact, it made me say to myself, I need a course in this. I do need to understand what the language is that's used by financiers and investors, because without understanding what these words are, then I can't advocate or lobby for better approaches. And it was encouraging to hear that there are successful models already in the market that are working very effectively, that are delivering a sizable energy efficiency improvement, that are acceptable to public authorities and private authorities, and that can, even in the anticipation of the rules to come, be treated off balance sheet and therefore come from operational budgets, which is a key barrier that has been holding back a lot of investment in the sector. And you also spoke about the need for simplicity and uniformity, which I would link back to my words and language, because if the language was simpler, would we understand it better? So with that, these are a few of the key messages that I have picked up from this morning. I hope you've enjoyed the event. It's always a pleasure to put on an event like this that stands a little out of the ordinary, and I look forward to seeing you again next year.